I'm going to hand over to Robbie and to Tony here.
Afternoon, everybody. Those of you who are veterans of this meeting will know that this is a topic that we've discussed under a lot of different titles over nearly 3 years now. It was originally something that we talked about as being the Blackpool Pledge, if you remember back then. And the idea behind it has always been very simple. There's a lot of people in this room who are not going to the game, who have been season ticket holders for a long time. And the question we asked ourselves was, if you're used to paying out £300 or possibly more for a season ticket every year, wouldn't it be a good idea if we could persuade Blackpool fans to give that money or pledge that money to the trust instead? That was the original idea. A number of us raised it over a period of time. I was one of them, but I wasn't the first and certainly not the last. But its time never seemed to have come. One of the reasons why the committee didn't want to pursue it way back then was that a change of ownership at the football club seemed very remote. And there didn't seem an awful lot of point really in trying to raise a lot of money when we weren't actually going to be able to use it in a way that actually had a direct influence on the way that the club operates. Obviously that's no longer the case. We had the judgment on the 6th of November. I spoke very briefly at the extraordinary meeting of the 11th meeting when probably nearly all of you were there. And I said that we had begun work on that, and I said to you, wouldn't it be nice if we could invite everybody to sort of pay £31.27, quite apart from anything else that they might be prepared to pledge. And I was sent away, having rashly volunteered to actually do some due diligence on how this would work. Now, this is nowhere near as simple as we had hoped it would be. We had hoped that we could just invite pledges and that people would be able to use the website to get the money in, and it would all be relatively simple. But BST's legal status means that there are certain obligations upon us about the way that we do it. We are established under the Industrial and Provident Act 1965, which inherently isn't very interesting, but what it means in practice is that we've got to comply with this. This is the Community Shares Handbook. It's issued by the Community Shares Unit. There's 109 pages of it. I rarely go anywhere without it these days. And we have to be seen to be complying with this, because we won't get the support of Supporters Direct or the accreditations that we need to actually make it work. So this is not something that is going to be done easily or necessarily as quickly as we would want. This talks about it being a community share. The essentials of it are just the same as I described earlier on. The idea is that we invite people to take part. We set a minimum amount that we want people to put in, and we raise as much money as we possibly can. It is not like buying shares in a public limited company, in the sense that if you put £200 in, you get one share. If you put £2,000 in, you get one share. If you put £200,000 in, you get one share. This is not like buying shares in a public company. This is a lot of like-minded people coming together to invest in a community project that we all believe in. And the idea is that everybody puts in according to what they can afford, subject to the minimum floor, and everybody's voice counts the same as everybody else. So it's, if you like, it's truly democratic in that sense. That's not to say that we won't try and get other more wealthy institutional investors involved if we can, which we will. But this is one of those schemes whereby we want the widest possible range of people to come in, and we want people to be able to contribute according to what they think they can afford. We have at the outset to explain to people what we're going to use the money for. We can't just go out to you saying, please give us £200, £250, whatever it might happen to be, without actually having a specific, it's very hard to say with a microphone under your nose, a specific purpose in mind. And that is one of the reasons why we conducted the survey, which a great many of you have replied to. I have to say over 500 replies to that survey have come in, which we think is absolutely fantastic. And I'll be inviting Tony in a minute to say a little bit about the headlines of that. But what we said in that survey were a number of questions really to help us to gauge what you actually thought you might be interested in. So one of the things that we asked you, for instance, was would you be interested in us trying to take an equitable share in the football club if the opportunity came about? And if that opportunity doesn't come about, would you also be prepared for us to invest that money in pursuing some of the constitutional aims of the trust, which appear on the sort of front page of our website? So that survey was the first stage, if you like. It generates a lot of priceless information, which is going to be very useful to you, and I'll explain more about that in a minute. But first of all, I'm going to ask Tony just to briefly say what you said in response to the questions that we asked you.
Yeah, the survey, we were very pleased with the results. It's a positive response. We'd like to thank you all who filled it in. It's really important that we know what we're talking about, the facts and the figures. The statistics are what we need to base, our future plans on. The key three questions really, at question 5, if you would choose a model of ownership for the club's ownership, what would it be? And overwhelmingly, people want us to be involved in the future. Rightly so, obviously, given what's happened in the past. And at question 9, as regarding should the trust have involvement in how the club is run, that was also an overwhelming response. And then further to that, as regards the community share offer, which involves us putting money to own a percentage of the club, that was overwhelmingly, again, at question 10, 67% strongly agreeing, and another 20% would tend to agree. Very, very few people, did not want that. So obviously those figures give us the green light to go ahead to try and work out a way that a community share offer can work for us as a group together. It needs somebody to pull it together. That's what BST's job is going to be. As Robbie says, it's not easy. We'll be working with Supporters Direct, who have the model for this and will guide us with it, and hopefully we can make this happen. The problem being it is all hypothetical at the moment because we don't know who is going to have ownership of the club and what offer they would possibly make to us as regarding what percentage we owned. But from the survey, the figures look good as regards the positive outlook that we've all got, that we're doing the thing that we want to do here. Thanks.
As Tony said, that's overwhelmingly positive because it does give us a mandate, we feel, to put us a lot more serious effort into this. It has always been the case for some time now that we were doing this work a bit speculatively because we didn't know who the new owners were likely to be. We still don't know for certain who they're going to be, but that's not going to stop us doing as much work as we can to be as ready as we can, so that when a change of ownership comes, we can have a sensible conversation with people about what we as a trust are able to bring to the table, whether that's actually taking a share in the club if it's on offer, because it might not be, or whether it's actually an ability to help the club with securing capital assets or whatever it might be. We've still got a lot of work to do. Getting ready for the survey and putting the survey was a couple of months of really solid work. And we're obviously very pleased that you've responded to it in the way that you have. What we need to do next is to move to a stage where we actually prepare a formal prospectus, which will, if you like, be the formal offer that we put out to you, saying, in return for your money, this is what you will get in response. It will set out your legal rights if you're an investor in that scheme, and it will set out what we will do with any surplus monies that we might gather, or indeed what we would do if we didn't get the minimum amount we were hoping to raise, or if circumstances changed in the meantime. We're going to spend the rest of the spring and into the early part of the summer doing that. We still have an awful lot to do, but the power of this really is really up to the supporters and the extent to which they take part. Our model for all of this actually is Portsmouth. Now, Portsmouth's circumstances were very different because they were actually trying to buy their football club. But what they managed to do was to persuade 2,500 people to part with up to £1,000 of money over a period of time, and they managed to raise over £2.5 million, which means that now that they have a very large share, or the majority share, in their football club, and are much more masters of their own destiny than they ever would have been under the rather shady and unscrupulous characters who owned them before. So you can see why we take them as being a good example for us to follow. They not only demonstrate what can be done, they also demonstrate what you can have as opposed to what you've had in the past. We as a committee and committee helpers are going to work flat out on that over the next 2 to 3 months. There will come a time when we're able to share an offer with you, together with some literature which spells it out in very easy terms what it is you're letting yourself in for if you come on board, and we hope you'll continue to give us the fantastic support that you've already done. Thank you.